Friday. I'm glad you could join us with regards to worship. We've been looking through John's Gospel and we've looked at the beginning, we've gone through different stories, but now we're just going to weave our way through particular connections within the Gospel itself. So the question I want to ask this morning is this: how strong is the thread that keeps us together? We could test that by asking, what are our family ties like? Some of us might be very proud of our family links, others might feel more self-conscious or even angry at some family situation. Or we could think about work. What's the team spirit like in delivering work? Is it fractured or is it really on song? Or maybe you've been watching football and you've seen certain teams at work and they've been really just performing above their game because it's good teamwork and they're well connected. But we need to think of ourselves today and the ties that bind us, particularly when we're thinking about followers of the way of Jesus, the forever family of God. What binds us there? And more specifically, what are the ties within our own congregation? At a practical level, wherever our mind takes us, we have today all the different ways to connect. Now, we could be making a phone call, we've got a text message, we use the landline now and again, there's a mobile, we use Messenger, there's Instagram, WhatsApp, Snapchat, and so on and so on. And they each describe how we connect. So, if you go onto Facebook, we can have friends. And sometimes there's close acquaintances. And then there's Twitter, which are the followers. And then in churches, well, we have members and adherents. In Jesus' day, for certain groups, it was circumcision. That's a painful choice. And in the church, too, back then and now, baptism of adults and of children happened. So, many ways of telling others how we belong is basically what happens there. But how do we know we belong to the forever family of God? In some senses, some of us don't need to know that they belong because we care for them, whether they're an elderly person whose memory has been lost, or a baby who's still developing and is unaware of their surroundings. And yet their care and support hinges on those who are literally the foundation for the forever family that works within a community. We might wonder still how we connect. And well, we've looked over these past few weeks to learn how that can be possible. And that can be even in tough times. So John, in his story of Jesus and in the letters written to the churches, was up against it. And why was that? Well, the connections were being tested. First, he sent the story of Jesus to the early followers of Jesus, who were struggling that they no longer belonged to the community they grew up in. They were feeling isolated and rejected by the people they once knew. And the early church followers could see through those stories of how the first followers felt the same way. Believing and following Jesus can have an impact. We might even feel the same as individuals where we live. We can grow up also feeling we grow distant from others because of our commitments. And we see that from the story that they come from different places. In parts of the world, you know, we find that some people, for isolation and rejection, it could cost them their lives. For others of us, maybe it's just a silent, civil kind of bemusement about our commitment. So John was also up against it in a second way. And that was not just God's forever family being marginalised by others, but in the letters that were written to the churches where John was associated, the early followers were starting to have problems between themselves. And this is what happens when, under stress and pressure, a sense of survival comes out that becomes self-centered, creating darker behaviour and divisive and hurtful attitudes. And I've been and have seen and experienced the wrong end of that. But I would not be alone. Sadly, the church through the centuries seems to know how to press that self-destruct button. Maybe it's happened to you. But we'll find from John that it's not a reason to give up and walk away. There is more to it. You see, there's an ancient lesson that John wishes to teach us and hold on to. Even as he was reaching his elderly years, and the memories of sharing the journey with Jesus was a distant echo, those truths still were ringing loud and clear in his ears about how Jesus wanted us to follow in his way. And it's the same for us, these millennia. So there is a golden thread that weaves through the gospel story, but also into the letters for the same church that still connects with us. And we can see that in a very rare but significant phrase used by Jesus, we begin to have a clue. And it's when he says, "My disciples." So if we quarry this important vein of gold out of this story, we can start to treasure how we live today, and it comes with that simple phrase, "My disciples." There are only 3 occasions when Jesus uses this phrase, and it provides for us a toolbox of how we should start to tick as a community and to discover how to be noticed by others by the way that we live. Now, congregations can say we are at the heart of the community, but are we the heartbeat of the community? It's not a formula, it's a way of being alive. It was Jesus' call to his very own, the 12, the very epicenter where this all spreads out. It happens in John 8, 13 and 15, where those words, "my disciples," infuse the spiritual blood that makes us pulse with the compassion of God. So it says in one verse, to the Jews who have believed him, Jesus said, "If you hold to my teaching, you're really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." So what was that teaching that made those 12 stand out? And it's in these words, "A new commandment I give you, love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. And by this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another." And then again it says, "If you remain in me and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish and it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory that you bear. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Now remain in my love." You see, it's not enough just to be known as belonging to God. That's a given. We are his forever family. But there's a reason why, and that we are God's. And it comes through 3 actions that are observed by others in these phrases of "my disciple." And it's holding, knowing, and showing what is God's love. So that others can see we are holding on to something. Others can see we know what this love is. And others can see how we show this love. What does that look like? You love as I have loved you. It's looking to the life of Jesus again and again and reflecting that in our lives again and again and again. I have to ask some questions then to know where we're starting from with all this, because we might think we know. So here they are. Have we let our grip slip? Are we holding on? Does it feel like we're holding on by our fingertips? You see, there is one truth in all of this. God has never let go of you. And God's grip is as firm on you. But do we reciprocate that? How much do we know of this love of God? Have we explored it enough? Do we know how wide it is, how deep it is, how high it goes? If we don't, let's start finding out. Just because you don't know doesn't mean it's not there. But if we're floundering in the dark, then we're missing out. And that means others are missing out. And it means others are missing out on God's love too. How much of this love are you showing? We actually might feel strong in answering that. But let's hang on here. How do we get on with those first two questions about holding and knowing about this love? But be assured that God will always be showing the love He has for us. That love from above. And we need to count our blessings. Now, I've asked a lot of questions because that's what we need to do. So we can explore and start in an honest way that pathway and pilgrimage of the My Disciple journey. You see, in these verses alone we discover that holding to Jesus' teaching of love is transforming, showing what a loving community looks like and drawing from the source of what that love is itself. You see, he said, "For this is the message you heard from the beginning, we should love one another." It sounds a simple statement, but it asks a lot of hard questions. So in this week ahead, we need to be asking and knowing what to expect. But be assured of this, God is holding on to you. He knows that in Jesus there's an endless love for you that can be known. And He shows this through the true love He invested in Jesus. Thanks for listening and take care.